George Kilpatrick Inspiration for the Nation, celebrating people we feel good about. Gwen Webber-McLeod is the CEO and president of Gwen Inc. She's
Yes,
a leadership
sir.
transformer. She's the president and CEO. Oh, you said former. Did you say former?
No, I'm still that president and
Oh,
CEO.
I thought you said former. I had to stop for a
No,
minute.
no. That's what
she,
I'm doing. I'm still that girl.
she, she's especially passionate about working with leaders of color in particular, helping them to be calm. What are the five C's? Calm,
Confident,
competent,
competent, courageous,
confident.
and calm. Four of them.
Yes, courageous and calm. Right.
Yeah.
And she's been doing this for 30 years or more. She has also been doing that from the birthplace of Harriet Tubman, right?
Hmm.
From Auburn, New York. That's the hometown, and that's where she's been doing her thing. No coincidence that she is also. I consider her a liberator of minds, of hearts, and passions, and she's getting things done. So I've been watching you, Gwen,
Hmm.
um, and your LinkedIn and your social media, and let's talk about the hair system because you did no. Let's go right to it. I ain't
Let's
even
do it.
going right. I ain't even going front right. So Black women and their hair is
Hmm.
a thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you decided that it wasn't going to be a thing.
Hmm.
Talk to me about that journey.
Yeah. Well, I used to wear my hair not quite this short, but very short when I was an undergrad at SUNY Potsdam. And so, and then my daughter is a pediatric cancer survivor. So there was another time in my life where I cut my hair relatively short, but not this short. But I really was thinking about my relationship with hair and how much of my time was being spent thinking about hair, caring about hair, buying hair in beauty salons. And I started to observe increasing numbers of Black women choosing to shave their heads. And it occurred to me, and I was also intrigued and inspired by the Black powerful women in the first iteration of Black Panther. And then when I saw a second iteration coming, I thought, this is interesting. And then there's this powerful actress. I can't think of her last name, but it's Michaela is her first name. And
Yeah,
she has
Michaela
power.
Cole.
Yes,
I may destroy you.
yes,
Yes.
that. And I was observing just how beautiful she was with no hair. And
Yeah, she
so I just decided to shave my head.
did you like just like that? I just decided.
Yeah, I just kind of said, you know what? There's so many other things I could be using with that time. When I think about how my own thinking about myself in relationship to hair was making me not always feel so good about myself. And I thought, you know what? I have so many other things that I can do with this time. It's not unusual to me to have short hair. Going bald was really, as I was observing so many Black women do it, being fabulous. I said, I'm just going to shave my head. So I did. That's kind of how it happened.
What has your experience been since you've done that at this
Mm-hmm.
stage of the game?
Well, what's really interesting is that, first of all, a lot of people think or current concerned that I have a health issue. And I'm always assuring them that I don't. And I'm inviting them to observe how many other Black women are making this choice about their hair because people's obsession with Black women and our hair is always very intriguing to me. And no matter what we do to our heads, somebody's feeling some kind of way about it. So, one of the things that I will say tongue in cheek is, and I've written about this on my in a thought piece on my LinkedIn page, is that it's not what's on our heads that people should be concerned about. It's what's in my head that
Mm-hmm.
people should be concerned about. So it's been really interesting navigating the reaction. And I kind of did a little marketing campaign in advance, like let it just sort of strategically leaking that I was going to do it, right? And thinking about it and talking about it. And then, so when I actually showed up in my social media spaces with a shaved head, people weren't that surprised because I talked about my journey to making this decision. I'm very transparent on all of my social media platforms. So that's one thing. The other thing is that people think it's courageous. And
It is.
honestly, certain level for me, it's like it's a fashion thing for me, right? It's me being in charge of what Black beauty means to me. And then the other thing is observing how my white colleagues react to the fact that I'm choosing to have no hair
Mm-hmm.
and showing up like this, being my confident, competent, courageous, and calm self. And me learning that it's not my job to make them feel comfortable with this, right? If they ask about it, I tell them. But I can tell that they aren't quite sure what to do when I show up like this, which is not an uncommon experience for me with white people. But that's been really interesting. And work also really observing in myself that it's not my job to make them feel comfortable with whatever I do to the top of my head. So I just been walking around like this,
Yeah,
feeling comfortable and relaxed and confident about it.
to me, it's more. It's like this, that you've made a decision for your body, for yourself. You've
Yeah,
made a choice, and then you have to be confident in navigating all the spaces that people aren't used to seeing you, and being
yeah,
comfortable and confident about that. And to some extent, I'm thinking to myself, I said, I bet that Gwen feels transformed, and that, I don't know if you want to call it a weight has been lifted, but
mhm,
that's how I'm interpreting.
yeah.
Ooh.
That's exactly. I do feel transformed. I really actually read it. I love India Ari. So I went back and listened from a different perspective to the lyrics to I Am Not My Hair. And then the other thing that I saw was a quote. It might have been by Coco Chanel that says, when a woman chooses to cut her hair, she's also positioning to transform her life. And that's all what this is about for me. I have so many other things to do with the hours that I spent on my head, on my hair, being worried about it, having it, not having it. And the truth of the matter is, what else is freeing is if I want to look like Beyonce tomorrow, all I got to do is go to BSW and buy the hair, right? And so the fact that I can choose to look however I want is very freeing to me. And this is another very powerful choice in my life that's very freeing to me as a Black woman
And
and very transformational.
it's very interesting, because I love that you said that, because you're also saying that I am still choosing how I want to show up. Because
Mhm.
for a lot of, like, for example, I would think, oh, that's it. That's going to be your look. But you're
Right.
like, well, if I want a Pixie tomorrow, I could do that. If I
Yeah.
want to Beyonce, I could do that. If I
Hmm.
want to be Patty, I could do that. Like,
Yeah.
or excuse me, if I want to be Gwen with this look, like,
Right.
you're not restricting yourself to how you
Right.
want to look. And that certainly is also, to me, a form of liberation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that I talk with my Black colleagues about all the time. Black women have a very specific type of journey around this, right?
Right.
But, one of the things that's just absolutely fabulous to me is seeing more young Black women choosing to show up with their natural hair. So I have a new muse. Her name is, I think her last name is Young. She's Rhonda, I think Young, who's the meteorologist on
Oh,
Spectrum.
on a Spectrum.
She is like fabulous.
Listen,
Okay.
can I just
I
tell you,
love her. I want
I
to
don't
be
have Spectrum, right?
yeah,
But I was in the doctor's office,
right,
and I was like, I'm looking at the sister's cut now, for people to
right.
know. She basically had, well, I don't know how to
She
describe it.
has
You
my
describe
hair
what
and
she
then this
had.
hair on the top. She's
Yeah.
got like
And I
a
was like,
she's got like a fade and a little bit of a high
I
top
was
going
like, I have never seen
on.
a
Mhm.
weather person. I was like, and doing it confidently.
Yep.
I said, because I don't know her. And I was like, I see you, sister. Go ahead. So talk to
Yeah.
me about her.
Yeah, she's fabulous to me. And that's what I mean. Like, I'm so inspired that young Black women have taken control of their look. They have agency over their bodies. They are wearing braids, they are wearing locks. You see it on all of the national media outlets as well. And I am just so excited that so many of us are choosing to be unapologetically Black. And it's so important. I think it's a healthcare matter, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
I think I posted to my LinkedIn page one time a quote that I saw that said, if you're sitting next to a Black woman every single day, what you really want to know is to simply be in your space. She is constantly thinking about what she looks like, how you're reacting to her, what's going on around her. And that what you need to understand is it's very difficult for Black women to be fully present at work because we are constantly adjusting ourselves to fundamentally fit models of executive presence that weren't designed by us for us. And what I'm loving right now about new generations of young Black women is they're defining executive presence for themselves and showing up unapologetically as they are, which is why I love Rhonda. I love all the young Black women I'm watching on all of the local media outlets and all of the national outlets too, choosing to simply just be Black.
And it's interesting because when you think about a outlet like Spectrum,
Right.
there was a time when Black women didn't have that agency,
You're
didn't
right.
have that choice about how they could wear their hair. I remember it was
Right.
a big deal one time when Tamron Hall, when she was still on the Today Show, like
Right.
I think she let her hair go natural one time, and
Right.
it was like the talk of
Right.
the day.
Right.
Or um, this is so I was thinking that just this Ayanna Presley, that's what I'm thinking
Yes.
about.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Who she actually did have a medical thing
She had
going
alopecia.
on. Um but yeah, no, I love it. Now here's the other thing. I wanted to get this in here too around your hair. Look at how much we talk about your hair, right?
Exactly.
But I just feel like it's also symbolic of other decisions that we need to make about our own lives. Now I want to get to that in a moment.
Right.
But there's also this thing about touching Black women's
Yeah.
hair,
Yeah.
right? And so now I wonder if this confusion, especially among White women who are mostly the ones that do that, because Black folk know don't touch my hair, right? We
Right.
already know that. So this is there still the need to want to touch your head?
Actually, shortly after I shaved my head, I was at a very public event and a high level leader literally palmed my head like a basketball.
Mm.
And I slapped his hand away. And he must have gone home and reflected on it because the next day he sent me a long message apologizing for touching my body. It's
Mm.
akin to people feeling entitled to touch a pregnant woman's belly. Like, what is that about?
Mm.
And so, yeah, I was also attending a play, and a woman walked by and brushed the back of my head and said, I just couldn't help myself. I couldn't touch it. I said, don't ever touch any Black woman like that again. But it's that thing that my body doesn't belong to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that impulse, which is why I post about the Crown Act, that advocacy initiative to make it illegal to discriminate against Black people for what's on top of our heads, right? And so, yeah, people still want to touch it. As a matter of fact, I think there's more intrigue in touching my head because it's bald. So I'm constantly navigating that. And I I I think enough people know me well enough. I give off an energy that people don't want to kind of step into my bubble anyway, because I have a vibe about me. But yeah, that has continued to be intriguing to me too. And I think the question is, what is it about people that thinks they're entitled to have access to Black women's bodies,
Mm.
whether it's my head, my pregnant belly, my butt, what is it? Because people will cross that boundary without thinking about it. And I'm going to tell you something, it never occurs to me to put my hands on the hair or in the heads of my white colleagues. No.
Let me tell you, we're talking with Gwen Webber-McLeod, CEO and president of Gwen Inc. She's a consultant, strategist, especially works with CEOs of color to help them feel competent, calm, courageous. Go ahead. What are the other two?
Confident.
Confident.
Yeah.
I would get them all at one point.
Yeah.
And we're talking. We spent some time talking about hair and Black women's hair in particular, and how to let go of the just how to let go. I mean, I guess what's the metaphor that you then take with you around this decision, and then how has this affected other decisions? Now, you've always been, an entrepreneur. You've always
Right.
been out here doing your thing,
Right.
but this particular thing, what has transformed in yourself, that something new about yourself that you've learned through this process? And then let's take us into then leadership around
Right.
agency in my body and
Right.
other decisions that I have to make.
Well, let me just say this, that honestly, for me, this was quasi a beauty decision, right?
Okay.
Honestly, it's just like I wanted to change the way that I looked. In doing so, I understood the politics around doing,
Go
right?
ahead.
So I had to maneuver this in a way and prepare myself to understand that people would have a reaction and to stay fully present and unapologetically my little Black self while other people were choosing to react to a choice that I made for myself. But fundamentally was a combination about just me wanting to change my look and me thinking bald heads are fabulous, to be honest with you. So I did it, right? But what I will say in a larger context, that for Black leaders, we are constantly having to be hyper conscious about how people are responding to everything about us.
Come on.
So my hair is just really probably a millionth of what people are reacting to when I show up in spaces. So when I use this in terms of sort of this is an example in my day-to-day work with Black leaders, what we're frequently talking about has little to do with whether or not they are academically or intellectually qualified to do the work that they do. I would say 90% of my coaching work with Black leaders is how do I thrive in a space that frankly was not designed by me for me and is not large enough to hold all of who we are. And the analogy that I've been making lately is that when Black people show up into systems, right, the system responds to us like an irritant almost, especially if we're ascending to levels of leadership that would make us the unexpected leader, right? The first, only, indifferent, that struggle to gain and sustain credibility, and us having deep concern about our legacies. And a lot of what's happening to us is that because the system doesn't expect it to be us, it compresses, it starts to convulse against us. And that's what is leading us to think that we're crazy. When in fact, what's happening is most of the systems most of us work in don't expect us to be in the system in the first place. And so all of this work around DEI is intriguing to me because when I fundamentally think about what's going on is that we are in increasing numbers showing up in organizations that weren't designed to receive us, especially in the leadership space. And so the system's really reacting to our presence in it, almost like we're an irritant. Now, I know people, I don't want people to, I'm only making an analogy because we're not irritants. We are in these systems because frankly, it's our birthright as American citizens to be in any system we want to be. But I will use that analogy with my clients because the pressure of dealing with that, if we're not conscious and intentional and developing a strategy to thrive in that kind of environment versus survive it, the negative outcomes are showing up in us derailing in our careers. More of us dropping out of the workforce and starting entrepreneurship. And if you think about the health issues that Black people are confronted with, that we die disproportionately from, they're all stress related. And so for me, the fact that we even spent this much time talking about my hair is an example of me being fully aware that my mere presence is experienced as a revolution in the first place, right? Because people don't expect me to be the leadership expert. And then I'm going to shave my hair, something that feels very extreme in the system, although I'm among millions of Black women with bald heads in America, right? And so much of my work is around helping Black leaders understand that systems are constantly trying to shape our beautiful square pegs to fit in the round hole that they want us to be in because they can manage us when we're like them. Does that make sense when I say that?
Yeah, no. What I'm hearing, and by the way, I'm going to tell you a hair story real quick, and then I'll respond to the point I wanted to make. But like, there was somebody who was the nephew of somebody who was a very famous politician
Mm-hmm.
in Syracuse, New York, who was in leadership for a long time and then
Mm-hmm.
ended up going away for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I ran into them at Wegmans, and immediately, we were talking, and then rub- he did the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
uh, like
Yeah.
touch my head, and so I'm shocked in that moment. I'm like,
Yeah.
what the heck, I'm like, no, I'm a grown ass man. You didn't just do
Yeah.
that, right? So what do I do? You know what I did, right? Went up there and did it back.
Yep.
And he was shocked.
Mm-hmm.
He was shocked. Right? Like, wait, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, I'm not, I was like, nah, we're not, no, this is what we doing? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what we doing. And
Mm-hmm.
now we good. You
Right.
take care too,
Yeah.
right? Now, we good. Now you know not to put your hands on me. And
Yeah.
I didn't actually say that, but I just did it back. He
Right.
knew what that was.
Yeah.
And we and so to go back to what you were saying, one of the things that occurs to me is around you, like you said, this politics of hair, and there's a generation of, like you look at some of the athletes, entertainment,
Mm-hmm.
everybody's got their hair going everywhere, except for Don King. You remember Don King back in the day? He
Yeah.
he wore his hair like a crown,
Right.
right? Literally. So what are you saying to folks now, young people especially?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm staying with this moment because I do want to talk
Right.
about leadership and
Right.
transition and all
Well, this
that.
is a leadership conversation,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. So, what are you saying to young people? Because there is a quote unquote corporate look, or is
Mm-hmm.
there? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a corporate look?
Right.
Right? We've just come out of pandemic, and which has changed and everything. You
Right.
talked about young people today, and it also made me think of the two brothers in Tennessee, Pierce, the Justins,
Mm-hmm.
the two Justins who this week
Mm-hmm.
both were reinstated to
Yeah.
their positions after they were um, expelled, if you will, from the Tennessee state legislature, but both reappointed will have to run in a special election to keep their seats because they were expelled for no reason. But making a long story short, what is your conversation with young people
Mm-hmm.
around the look, around what is the culture of the organization, and from your experience from a
Mm-hmm.
corporate, from a nonprofit, are corporations now less sensitive around, because braids, I had somebody come to an interview with me not too long ago in braids,
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
brother, right?
Yeah.
So what is there new rules? Have the rules been tossed aside, or does that mean you can only be in certain spaces?
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of, what do they call it? White shoe law firms. Can
Mm-hmm.
I walk up in there with my
Mm-hmm.
braids and my earring or whatever?
Well, I would like to maybe respond to this from two perspectives, right? So I have an executive coaching practice, and I have the privilege of being the mentor to some of the best and brightest up and coming Black and Brown leaders in the state of New York, and frankly across the country. And we talk about this a lot. And what I fundamentally say to them is that it's important for you to pay attention to corporate culture, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to not show up in all your allness. You just need to pay attention to it. And I recently was talking to a young woman who was out in LA about this. And she said she's constantly being told that she doesn't look executive enough. And my feedback to her was, because the model that they're judging you through has nothing to do with you. So, what I want to invite you to do is sort of like when you're in Rome, pay attention to what the Romans are doing, but don't do just show up confidently as yourself, right? So there's certain places I will put on a suit because it's less of a distraction if I just have that suit on, right?
Right,
Because there's so much else going on with me.
right.
However, I'm really encouraging young professionals to understand where they are and to play chess and not checkers,
Mm.
and not to compromise around those things, that are really meaningful for them. And frankly, to be interviewing a prospective employer as much as they're interviewing you, because if they can't accept what's on your head, why would you want to work there anyway? That's one thing that's going on, is inviting them to be more, to understand that when you're in an interview, that it's critically important for you to interview that prospective employer as much as they're interviewing you, because you can avoid the experience of showing up to work someplace where you're not going to, they have no ability to take you as you are. That's one thing. Then I talk about that clothing can matter. So just pay attention, right? But do it your way. So I might have a suit on, but I'm going to have on really funky jewelry. I'm going to be my whole self in it. And I encourage young people almost to think of it like a costume, right? Buy a black suit and wear your costume when that's going to help you extract from that experience what you need to keep doing your thing professionally. Mm-hmm. In my consulting practice, I have an OD consulting practice where I go into organizations as a DEI strategist, and I lovingly challenge the concept of executive presence all the time and remind them that executive presence was not taking into consideration women, and especially people of color, and what naturally happens on top of our heads. So be careful about that bias showing up in the interview process, in the promotion process. And, one of the things is that I kind of say to people that Gwen Inc. is a private sector leadership corporation, but in some ways, I pride myself in being a bit of a weapon of mass destruction, right?
Come on.
And I'm just constantly through my work blowing up systems that make it difficult for people to have equitable access to opportunity based on what they look like. And so when I'm talking to young people, I'm like, start to redefine what executive presence is. Show up like you are, and if you show up confidently and perform, what they gonna do?
Word, because that's where the challenge comes.
Exactly.
You're trying to have all that and then sit down and smoke all day. That's not gonna cut it. You got to do the work, baby.
Yeah, and really, and I honestly, a lot of people like, well, millennials and younger, they don't have a work ethic. I said, I don't believe that. I think they absolutely have a work ethic. I just think that they are more willing to define what they want their lives to be like and find the job that allows them to live that life. But all of what we're talking about is important leadership conversations when it comes to leaders of color, right? Because seldom is it about whether or not we're smart enough, qualified, or good enough. All of the dynamics we deal with are sort of that extracurricular stuff that's happening because after 400 years of resistance in a country that refuses to let go of its habit of racism, we are continuing to work in environments that are shocked that we're in them. That's really what the crux of my executive coaching practice is, helping people figure out, how do you thrive in that? Because often we're the smartest people in the room. But what I like other reactions to things, and that's what leaders of color are really up against.
Talking with Gwen Inc. CEO, Gwen Webber-McLeod, CEO of Gwen Inc., helping us to stay confident, courageous, calm, and competent.
Yeah.
Gwen, I was thinking about conversations that we've had over the years, especially around transitions and understanding when you're looking at something and you want to, and you need to be strategic about the moves you make, and how sometimes we get stuck in places that no longer serve us. And how do we, what are the things that we need to think about to move through the fear of change, or the fear of lack, or the fear that you won't have what you need? And for some people it's not a thing, but for other people it is a thing. Yeah. And so how are you helping people navigate those kinds of decisions, and what are some of the considerations in making those sorts of decisions?
Right. Well, demographically, my client base is reflective of every dimension of diversity, right? I just happen to have a specialty practice inside my company that's
Right.
designed specifically for leaders of color.
And you're clear
So
about
I'm
that.
having this conversation with people across generations. So if I could respond to it in a generational way, I'd like to. So with my clients who are millennial or younger, what I'm inspiring them to do and coaching and mentoring them to do is to be very strategic about their career and to see their career as a resource that they're going to use to ultimately live the life that they want to live. Because
Mhm.
it's about mindset, right? And for people of color, we're raised to be very pragmatic. So I will talk to high level executives that are making six figures and miserable. And when I say to them, why are you still there? Because it's no longer about money. It's because somebody in their family saying, girl, you better not leave that good job, right? You got insurance, right?
Right,
And
right.
so we censor ourselves around allowing ourselves to think that. So with my younger clients, I'm really talking to them about be in charge of your career. And really, our careers are really but a grain of sand on the whole beach that's known of our life. So if you can be constantly thinking about the kind of life you want to live and then leverage your career to help you do that with younger people, that helps them develop this as a practice. So then when they hit points of transition and they're looking to structure their next deal, the foundation for making that decision in great part has to do with how making that decision is going to impact their lives. Now we all need some money. So I'm not telling encourage anybody, but I think that so often we let the career drive us
Mhm.
versus letting the career, seeing the career as a resource that helps us live a life. Then there are people of my generation and younger. So I'm 67, right? People who are between their mid 40s and my age who are often at what I call cliffhanger positions, right? They've gotten as high as they can get in their career. And now they're thinking, what's next for me? Or they're thinking, maybe I should retire. And I really have a very similar conversation because what I observe about my generation is that we were so raised to be pragmatic that we never allowed ourselves to imagine what we really want our lives to be like. So when I'm with someone in that situation, really what coaching or consulting does for them is it gives them the courage to explore what's next for them. And then I really, because we're pragmatic, support them in taking a pragmatic look at like, this is really what you want to do. Now let's go back and look at your finances to see, do you have enough financial resource to live that life? If the answer is yes, then I help them get the courage to jump, right? It's a process, usually takes about 3 to 6 months. If they discover that they may not in the moment have enough resource to do it, we start to strategize around, well, what's it going to take, right? And sometimes they're willing, they'll say to themselves, you know what, Gwen, I may not have all the money, but I have enough money to at least make a next transition, right? Because it's incremental. Even when we jump, we're not less like blindly jumping. Well, sometimes I have, right? But I think it's more about it begins, George, with just simply starting with asking yourself, am I living the life that I really want to live? And
Mhm.
if the answer is no, it's okay to say to yourself, well, is where I am right now serving a purpose? With young leaders, it absolutely is. Right. So I meet a lot of young leaders that are like, I want to own a business. I'm going to quit my job tomorrow. I'm like, pump the brakes. Do not do that. But when you go to work on Monday, you could start to think that this could be the beginning of your strategic, graceful
Mhm.
exit strategy,
Right.
right? And start to think of your employer as an investor in your
Mhm.
next move, right? Because people be at work cranky. I hate my job, but they're getting their paycheck. So I'm thinking, think about that. With us, we have to think about giving ourselves permission to imagine life beyond the kids, imagine life beyond this career that I've built for a long time. And then the fearful stuff for us usually comes down to pragmatic stuff that we've created underlying beliefs about money that prevent us from even exploring the possibility of what life could look like after a 25-year career.
Gwen Webber-McLeod, Gwen Inc., CEO, talking about transitions and how to do it based on where you see yourself in life. And I like this idea of really taking off the limitations and
Mm-hmm.
saying, how do I want to live? And then what do we say? Speak it and right, but tell the universe what you want, and then the universe will, or tell God. Let me
Yeah.
for our listeners, tell God what you want, and then uh things will conspire to make them happen for you if you're doing the work that's necessary to do it.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, faith without works, it absolutely applies. If I have a deep spiritual practice, right? However, but I think it truly begins with, George, us literally allowing ourselves to imagine the life we really want to live. I always say all caps 48-point bold,
Right.
because for a lot of leaders, especially leaders of color, we're not allowing ourselves to imagine the life we really want to live. If I could use myself as an example, I would love to do that real quick. Could I?
Go ahead.
So on my 66th birthday in 2022, people would always say, Gwen, what you doing? I'd be like, girl, I'm living my wildest dreams, right? Like just tongue in cheek. But literally on my 66th birthday, I feel like God tapped me on the shoulder. And it occurred to me that I am literally living my wildest dreams right now at 66, right? So it was kind of exciting and scary at the same time, because I have literally accomplished everything I ever imagined that I would accomplish professionally and personally by the time I'm 66. And that's not coming from a place of arrogance. It's because I literally am doing what I believe God called me to do, right? But I wasn't recognizing all of that when I incorporated Gwen Inc. and was saying to people, this is my legacy building business, and this is where I'm going to do what God calls me to do. But for some reason, I got tapped on the shoulder. I do think it was God to really reflect on that. So I turned 67 this year, and I'm thinking, well, what do you do, right? When you literally are living your wildest dreams. And my whole life, I've asked God to make me great. God, please use my life in great big ways. Every day I'm like, thank you, God, for using my life in great big ways. And I literally look for the evidence that that's happening, right? But now I'm in this really interesting space where I'm not in a grind to create anything new. I don't feel like I want to start it. I don't feel compelled. I don't think God's calling me to start a new business. So I'm like, here's my transition story. So what do I do now? Because I'm not retired. I'm not retiring on what traditional would look like.
Right.
I have 73 years from now in mind. And I decided that since I've accomplished so much, that what I really want to do on my journey to 70 is to just find ways to deepen, amplify, and refresh the impact that I've already had. So now I'm making different kind of moves. And it's funny, God's sort of presenting the opportunities to me while he's challenging me every day. Look for the evidence that your life is making a difference that you want it to make. So now I find myself sitting at economic development tables, right? And for Black people, having a Black person in the room is critical, right? I'm thinking about still doing the work that I do, but doing it in a different way. I'm really clear that the journey to 70 is completely about challenging the status quo. I have enough reputation and influence and street cred that I can be really bold in rooms and challenge people around equity and access.
And do it with
As
such
a
grace.
civic leader and as a consultant. And I'm only picking clients that want to do that work. So I'm real clear that I'm interviewing you as much as you're interviewing me. And regardless of what the face of the project is, I'm always behind the scenes thinking and observing, if I do this, what will the impact be on the people who have been historically excluded from opportunities in this industry? So there's something really powerful that happens when you truly allow yourself to imagine the manifestation of your wildest dreams, because you can live them, because I'm a living testimony that you can. And then that you can imagine a life that you really want to live, because I'm spending a lot of time doing that right now. Like, what do I want to do now?
And this can happen at any age. Okay.
Absolutely.
So let's give the folks a homework, unless you have something else you wanted to add to this mix.
No.
So the homework is to do what? Right. We got to give them homework.
Absolutely. So let's end where we began. This whole conversation about my choice to shave my head on the surface looks, like I said, a beauty thing. But what this is really about and what I'm offering people to do is to really spend time thinking, do I have the courage to really be who I authentically want to be and who God's calling me to be? To
Come
ask
on.
yourself that question. And if the answer is yes, start to think about what in me will help me step in that direction and what in me could hinder my ability to step in that direction, and what do I want to do about it, right? Who can help me do that? Who's going to help me be courageous in doing that? So that whole conversation about my look, really what that's really about is me making a conscious decision that I was going to authentically and unapologetically be the Black leader that I've been called to be. And what is it going to take for me to do it? And by identifying what it's going to take, fear is a factor in leadership. And just because I feel fear doesn't mean I don't do it. I just do it afraid with courage strategies, right? So what do I need to keep me courageous? The other thing we talked about a little bit about was just this journey to leadership and what happens to leaders of color. And if I can just get you to embrace the concept that what we really are unexpected leaders. That's the trademark brand for my executive coaching practice, that people don't expect it to be us. And that if we flip the mindset in that moment to understand that we really are an asset, it's not us, it's the systems we're in, then we have to be very strategic. Claim your career and live it the way you want to. The final thing would be to really allow yourself to imagine the life that you really want to live at various points in your life, and then give yourself permission to live it. Think about the resources that are going to be required for you to do it and put your career in the proper perspective. Because so many of us have turned the career into the whole beach, when in fact, all it really is a resource that we use to live the life that we want to live. And for us, people of color, we're raised to be pragmatic. So you might need to take a pragmatic approach to giving yourself that permission. But you know what? In the end, focusing on those three things is worth it, because so often what I watch Black people do is work and die. And I don't want us to live like that. We live in a great big world where it's our birthright to live in this world any way we want to. But because of a 400-year history, we can't be haphazard about that, George.
Yeah.
We have to be planful and strategic. And as we say at Gwen Inc., leadership is not a job to do alone. Get in your network, your sister circle, your brother, whatever it is, get some people to put their hands on your back, and then step out with confidence, competence, courage, and calm, and live your life. Just live it.
And you know what? You can't fail, because
our history has proven time and again that we can't.
That is Gwen Webber-McLeod, President, CEO of Gwen Inc., gweninc.com, where you can find all of the great things that she's doing. Follow her on social media. Gwen Webber-McLeod is on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, where she's always fabulously telling us what's up.
Yeah, I feel so blessed. I'm so honored that God is using my life in the way that he is, and that he's created the opportunity for me to literally be living my wildest dream.
And you know what? I have to say this, that there are so many lives you have touched quietly and publicly. And it's because, and you decide, like, I got your hand on your back, a shout out to you, because you said, hey, George, I want to tie it a little bit into your thing that you're doing. And I'll never forget that. And that was just what we had an exchange of services, but at the end of the day, he was like, nah, go ahead. I want to do this because I believe in you, and I've got my hand on your back. And I just want you to know that your legacy is appreciated. It's real. A lot of people talk about it, but you are really, really about it. And I want to just give you those flowers.
Thank you so
now
much.
Because it's for real, for real. Like, people talk, but you actually do it. And in so many different ways, in so many different spaces. So when she says, yeah, I was with that brother over there doing such and such and such, she really was.
And it's also a historical obligation as a Black person. I feel, and I was raised to believe, that I am historically obligated to use my life and leverage my success to make sure that all Black people win. Like my
Mm.
parents would still be mad at me now at 67. And so that historical obligation gives me the courage to step out boldly in
Yeah.
this way. And
Come
so
on.
when I say my hands are on your back, it's because generations of Black people's hands, my ancestors, were on my back too, to this moment. And
Yeah.
I think that it's a philosophy that I carry that lets me step out boldly and doing that. And when I say it, I mean it. And I'm honored that people have allowed me to be in their lives in a way that was transformative for them. I believe that's what God called me to do, and it's a historical obligation that I have.
Amen. Gwen Webber-McLeod, CEO of Gwen Inc., here on Inspiration for the Nation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Inspiration for the Nation.